Hey guys, it's Bales. I'm at DraftKings and going to recap the lineups for three people from the DraftKings World Championship from Week 15. The first is Kandia, the winner, and then CSU Ramy 88, a co-founder at Fantasy Labs, and then my lineup. So we're looking at Kandia's. He won by 26.3 points, it looks like, and yeah, so he has a major advantage going into the final 10 in LA next month. It's a 4-game slate, so he can, with this lead, pretty much just play chalk and force people behind him to do some weird stuff. So he might be, I don't know, a coin flip, better than a coin flip to win over the field of 10, probably even better. So he rostered 3 players the same as I did: Tyrod Taylor, Devontae Freeman, and Sharkandrick West. So I'll talk about those guys when I do my lineup. His biggest player, the most important, was Antonio Brown, obviously, who he got at 8%, which is really low. I think almost everyone would gamble on someone like that at 8%, even against any defense. The matchup looked hard, but obviously Antonio Brown is seems to be a little bit more matchup independent than most receivers. It doesn't really matter who he's playing. So Kandia just soared up the leaderboards at the end there with Antonio and Woodhead going. He got Woodhead at 1%, so there's only one other player who rostered Woodhead. So 2 out of 200. Obviously, that's going to help you when that type of player has 4 touchdowns. Sammy Watkins, who I didn't roll out, he decided to stack Tyrod. I ran Tyrod out naked. Obviously, looks like probably made a mistake there with that, but and then he used the Colts D, which was interesting because they were super cheap. They were someone that I considered, but they were only 2K against a bad quarterback at home, and so I thought that they were going to be even lower than 7%, but I thought that was a really interesting choice. And I guess the other players are Jarvis Landry and Julius Thomas. Jarvis Landry, another guy similar to Antonio Brown, sort of in that he sees a bunch of short targets. Antonio Brown also goes downfield more, but Jarvis Landry is then so safe. So he put up his normal Jarvis Landry type of line of 8 catches for 54 yards. And Julius Thomas in a game where I think a lot of people were on the Jags to score a lot more points than they did, but his 6 for 79, I would say, is about what you paid for. So next we'll look at CSU Ram 88's top lineup. He was also on the Jags a lot, so he double stacked, and that's really what hurt him. Bortles didn't have that bad of a game since he ran for a touchdown, but Bortles at 9%, Allen Robinson at 6%, which I thought might have been his best play to get Allen Robinson. He was a great player. He didn't have a great game, but to get him at only 6%, I thought was amazing. He was my top receiver coming out of college. I really, really liked him. He has almost the exact same measurable size, everything as Dez Bryant. And so to get him at 6%, I thought was really smart. Amari Cooper at 7%, similar situation, even cheaper. Raiders were going to have to throw, so he had 6 for 120 and 2, so that was obviously very valuable to get Peter into the top 40. He went with the Lockett and Seahawks stack, so he would have doubled up on a return touchdown, and I know Peter likes to do that a lot, so that wasn't surprising. I had a good idea he was going to do that heading in. The biggest contrarian play was Melvin Gordon at 6.5%. He would have been even lower, except I think Max Dowry rostered Gordon in either 3 or 4 of his 8 lineups. So there were some sharp guys for sure on Melvin Gordon, and unfortunately he got hurt. So he was playing pretty well up until then. Sharkandrick West, I'll talk about in a minute. Julio Jones, this was the reason, one of the reasons that I rostered Devontae Freeman. I thought that would get exposure to that offense when everyone was going to be on Julio. So Julio had a good game. I would say he's still worth it for sure. I mean, when he puts up 29.8 points, but heading in, I I wouldn't gamble on Julio at 52%. So I was glad that I didn't roster him. I thought that was an okay move. I don't think Peter thought he would be at 52%, but he was definitely a good play. And then my lineup, I finished the worst out of all these. I did have the 2 injuries with Adrian Peterson and Amendola, so that hurt for sure, especially Amendola, who's in only 14% of lineups and had just 1 catch and a fumble. So 81st was worth 25,000, so only 5K more than the min cash. But yeah, so I ran Tyrod out naked. The reason I did that was because I thought he was going to get most of his points from running. I thought that against the Redskins, that set up well for them to come after him and him to take off on the ground. And he did have 79 rushing yards. I believe he also, I saw him get tackled at the 1 at least once. So yeah, I was happy with that play, and I did know he would be under-owned, I thought, so 4.5%, very happy with that. And overall, I did go with my normal contrarian approach. I had been thinking about playing more of a cash game type of chalkier lineup earlier in the week, but I decided against that when I sort of looked at the field and tried to predict what they were going to do. And so one way that I tried to be contrarian is obviously with players who are low, but another way was I tried to think about the strategy that most people would use in terms of lineup construction, and this week set up really well to go cheap at running back. We had Sharkandrick once the Spencer Ware news came out that he was going to be only an emergency back. We had Denard Robinson, Brandon Bolden, who I knew a lot of people would be on. So it just set up for most people to go cheap at running back and heavy at receiver. So I decided to more or less do the opposite. Sharkandrick was the only cheaper guy, and I thought that he was sort of a no-brainer once we got the Ware news. So, and I did think because it was around, I guess it was like 11 p.m. Eastern time, that you might have some amateurs who are like sort of set on their lineup and wouldn't pivot to West, where he would be under-owned. So I think he was under-owned at 26%. I thought he should have been maybe at like 40. He didn't really do much after the long run, but he did have a 39-yard touchdown run, I think, on the first drive. So 16.5 isn't bad, I guess, for the cost. And then at the other 2 spots, I went heavy or expensive at running back, and I did play a running back in the flex, which I almost never do in tournaments, but it was just because I really wanted these guys. Devontae Freeman, like I said, he was probably my second or third favorite play in this lineup of the week, where I thought that was a good chance to be contrarian, pay up to be contrarian on a stud in a good spot. And then AP was what I would say is my only mistake. 55%. I would never roster him at 55%. I didn't think it was that obvious. I thought he was going to be around 35%, which I was okay with. So yeah, even though he's a stud and I was paying for the workload which he was getting, I wouldn't do that at 55%. So wish that didn't happen, but the injury has nothing to do with that. That's not why I made a mistake. But yeah. And so I initially had in before I pivoted to West, I didn't have Amendola, but I did have another receiver who got injured in Alshon Jeffrey, who at least caught a touchdown. But yeah, so when I had Alshon in, it was very much a typical lineup for me with some receivers who I think are really talented and also big guys. Amendola is a guy that I normally don't roster, but I did like him a little bit just because I thought the ownership would be around what it was, and of course all the targets that he typically gets. So, but before that I had Alshon, Demaryius Thomas, who was higher than I thought. I thought he would be in the maybe 10 to 12% range, but I still really like Demaryius, and he had a good game with 2 scores. But my favorite play of the week, who I actually settled on pretty early, like Wednesday, I think, was Dorial Green-Beckham. So if I had 2 lineups, I might have used him in both, which would sound crazy. And I was talking to Peter about it on Saturday. I think I told him I was fine telling him. I knew he wasn't going to roster him or tell anybody. But yeah, I don't think he liked the play initially, and then I was trying to explain why I used him. But I really like Dorial Green-Beckham. I thought I might be the only person to roster him, but one other person did. I'm not sure who it was. But there were only 2 Green Beckham lineups. I liked him because, like I said, he's big, he can score, and I just think he's a really talented player. Also, rookie receivers develop very well over the second half of the year, and in particular the final 4 games. I thought that the Patriots were going to, first of all, it was going to be a good game script for the Titans to throw, which it was. And then I thought that the Patriots were going to try to, they usually game plan against a particular player. I thought that would be Delaney, who I think had 2 touchdowns. So I didn't really catch a lot of that game, so I'm not sure exactly how they had the game plan, but so I thought that Dorial Green-Beckham was going to just get a lot of looks because of that. So there were just a ton of reasons that I liked him. And then, of course, maybe having him as the only lineup, and then that he was 3,800, so he didn't need a huge game. So if he scored, it would have been a monster game for him. But yeah, that's a really good line for someone at 3,800. And 2 final players. One was the Chiefs D, who I already had in. So when I pivoted to West, I was happy with that correlation, the running back and defense, which worked out. And then the Chiefs obviously had the 2 return touchdowns. I didn't even think that they were going to be contrarian at all. I thought they were going to be in like 15% of lineups, so 9% was great. And then Gary Barnidge at Seattle. Yeah, I really didn't like how, I think the line for the implied total for Cleveland was only like 13 or 13 and a half. It was really bad. So that was why I didn't want to move on him, because I didn't think he had a great chance to score, and he did score early, but he only had 3 catches for 29 yards. But I thought I was going to get him at low ownership, which I did. And I thought people were just going to be more scared of the Seattle defense versus a tight end than maybe they should be. So that might have been a mistake on my part. But the only mistake that I know I definitely made was AP not better predicting his ownership, and perhaps not stacking Tyrod with Sammy. But yeah, other than that, I thought that my lineup was fine. I maybe lost like, I don't know, 25 or 50K in equity with the Amendola injury in particular, and then the AP, even though he's at 55%. But yeah, I mean, that stuff happens, and yeah, overall it was great, and good luck to everyone in LA next month.